She and her husband, a hustler and gambler known in the neighborhood as Daff, had become a high-powered couple in the hood.
Jameker Thompson was one of the most notorious drug dealers in Los Angeles, known as the Queenpin.
Uncle Jerome quickly became a fan favorite in the hit series Snowfall, and many viewers believed his character was inspired by a real-life figure named OG Puddin, a feared gangster, especially since the two shared a striking resemblance.
Got to, you just pull him forward.
Ain't gonna fit, boss.
Why are you questioning me, huh?
But it turns out Uncle Jerome may have actually been based on someone else entirely, Daff Mosley, a notorious drug kingpin. Let's dive in. Now, the name Daff Mosley doesn't ring bells for a lot of people, and that's probably why he rarely comes up in the debate about who Uncle Jerome from Snowfall was really based on. But the more you look into it, the clearer it becomes that Daff Mosley was actually the true inspiration, just without the extra muscle and buffness that Uncle Jerome brought to the screen.
Look at your auntie. You're a wildcat.
What really seals the connection is this. Daff Mosley was the husband and street partner of none other than Jameker Thompson, a well-known queenpin with a major legacy in the drug world. Now, if you're familiar with Snowfall, you know Uncle Jerome's wife Louie is just as street-savvy and hands-on as her man. And fans have started piecing it together. Louie may actually be based on Jameker Thompson.
Louie! Louie! Louie!
Daff and Jemeker were a real power couple in the game. They started young too, with Jameker still in high school when they were selling cannabis together, but once school was out, they were ready to level up. According to Jameker's own memoir, Queenpin, they had their eyes on the game, and the way they made that first move was wild. Jameker wrote that in 1980, she performed a sensual act on a bail bondsman named Willie to get their first ounce of coke. Not long after, she and Daff were pushing up to 4 kilos a week. Once the money started flowing, everything moved fast. That same year, they tied the knot and bought a nice house in Encino, California, a major step up. 2 years later, in 1982, they had a son and named him Anthony. Jameker was living the life she had always dreamed of: money, power, a thriving business, luxury cars, and a beautiful family. Everything she and Daff had planned together was happening exactly how they envisioned it.
I went over to her house and she had a Ferrari, a turbo Porsche. I mean, every car that you could ever fantasize about. A brand new swimming pool.
Money was my power. Money was my control. And that's what controlled me, the money. And I wanted the money.
But as with many stories like this, things took a dark turn. On November 23, 1984, tragedy struck. Daff Mosley was shot and killed at a car wash. That moment shattered Jameker. Daff wasn't just her partner in the streets, he was her entire world. But Jameker knew the game didn't stop for grief. If she didn't bounce back quickly, everything they'd built would fall apart. So in true boss fashion, she picked herself up and expanded the empire. She didn't just stay in LA. Jameker took the game all the way to Detroit, pushing weight and building her name in new territories.
After the death of her husband, she starts to travel around. She's spreading out across the country.
She had connections all over, the South, Atlanta, Detroit, Illinois, St. Louis.
I felt like the world was mine because now I'm doing it by myself.
She had an entrepreneurial fire that couldn't be extinguished. It was the same kind of street-smart hustle we saw in Snowfall when Louis helped Franklin run his nightclub to clean the dirty money. Jameker did something similar, launching a successful hair distribution business, which law enforcement believed was a front for laundering drug money. Even when Louis considered going around Teddy to get products straight from the Colombians, that wasn't just fiction. Jameker actually did it. She went direct, cut out the middlemen, and took control. At the height of her power, Jameker Thompson was reportedly raking in $1 million a week. Her story was bigger than most people realize. Jameker Thompson's empire was growing so big, even the feds had to admit it, to the point where FBI agents pulled her mother aside and told her that they considered her daughter one of the biggest cocaine dealers in America. Jameker had risen to the top of the game, and with that came the usual next step: laundering the money. So she started investing in different legit businesses, smart moves to clean up the paper trail and expand her reach. Around that time, she got involved with a man named Percy Bratton, who went by the street name Cheese. At first, it seemed like a solid pairing. They were both in the game, understood the hustle, and even when their romantic relationship didn't work out, they stayed business partners. But as it often goes in the streets, loyalty only lasts until the pressure hits. Cheese would later prove himself to be anything but solid. He got caught with 10 kilos of coke in his car while trying to sell to an undercover cop. faced with the kind of time that would keep him locked away for life, he folded. Cheese struck a deal with the feds and decided to cooperate. His testimony and the evidence he handed over gave prosecutors everything they needed to indict Jameker. Just like that, the empire she built was on the verge of crumbling. Once she caught wind of what was going down, Jameker didn't stick around to wait for handcuffs. She fled Los Angeles and went into hiding. For a couple of years, she kept a low profile, moving silently, always staying one step ahead of the law.
She actually disappears, leaves her son. It tells you how serious this is.
At that time in my life, I carried a gun in my Chanel purse daily.
But there was one thing she couldn't leave behind: her son. Despite being on the run, she would sneak back into town just to visit him at her mother's house. Then in 1993, Jameker made a decision that would change everything. Her son was graduating from the 6th grade, and she wasn't about to miss that.
She makes the mistake a mother would make, because a good would never have allowed her feelings for her son to get in the way of staying free from the law. She comes back to California for his graduation from school.
She came back to LA for the ceremony, trying to keep it low-key, but the authorities were already onto her. They had a strong hunch she'd show up, and they were waiting. As soon as she came through, they moved in. She was arrested on the spot. Jameker was then put on trial, and 12 others were also indicted as part of a sweeping case involving conspiracy to distribute and money laundering. But when it came time to face the jury, she was tried alone. The government made sure to lay it all out in detail: her operation, her connections, and the money trail. And in the end, the jury found her guilty on all counts. She was handed 15 years on 7 separate charges, all to run concurrently. Jameker tried to appeal the decision, arguing that the evidence wasn't strong enough and that the judge went too hard by placing her at the high end of the sentencing range. But the appeal didn't go anywhere. The court stood firm, and she was sent away. Jameker ended up serving 12 years of her sentence in a maximum security federal prison. And here's something crazy. During her time inside, she was locked up alongside the infamous Griselda Blanco, one of the most feared female drug lords in history. But while behind bars, something in Jameker changed. She began to reflect on her life, her choices, and everything she lost. And eventually, she found a deeper faith in God. Instead of staying stuck in regret, she used her time to grow spiritually and mentally. She even began to minister to other women in prison, sharing her story and offering hope to those who felt forgotten. That transformation carried her through the years until she was finally released in 2005. After her release, Jameker came back strong, but in a different way. She founded Second Chance Ministries in South Central LA, the very same streets where she once ruled the game. Now she's giving back, sharing the gospel, and helping others escape the same traps she once fell into. She owns the ministry, and through it, she's making a difference in people's lives every single day.
She is now an evangelical minister, helping people who have had drug addictions, who have had problems, who get out of jail, who can't find a job. So
these days, Jameker is remarried, living a whole new life. Her son, Anthony, grew up and took a much different path than his parents. He's now a professional skateboarder, carving out his own lane. Now, aside from Jameker, there are a few other Snowfall characters that fans say were inspired by real-life figures. One name that keeps popping up is Leon, and it turns out his character might be loosely based on a real dude named Cornell grew up in tough times out in South Central LA. Raised by a single mom whose restless lifestyle had him bouncing around 7 different elementary schools to be exact. Despite the chaos, Cornell was actually a gifted athlete. By the time he hit Los Angeles High School, he was already making noise on the football field. He got into Compton College, and as a freshman, was named a college football All-American. Dude had a real pro-level potential. But then things took a turn. Cornell's grades slipped, and just like that, his football dreams were put on pause. No GPA, no eligibility, no shot at the big leagues. That's when the environment started pulling him in a different direction. He remembers one day walking home from school, and his friend Rick, Freeway Rick Ross, pulled up on him with an offer that would change his life forever. Cornell took his $1,800 school refund check and flipped it straight into the drug game. It didn't take long before he was deep in it, becoming one of Rick Ross's top lieutenants. While Rick ran the empire as the so-called king of crack, Cornell was right there, helping run the show during the worst years of the cocaine epidemic in LA. What they didn't realize at the time was that they were actually selling for the CIA, but life in the game came at a price.
Exactly where we were getting it from, we thought we were getting it from some Colombian guys But, 20, 30 years later, we found out that, our own government was behind it.
Cornell lost 3 family members to crack addiction, and the guilt started creeping in. There were always people, friends, coaches, trying to pull him out of the street life, and just as he was starting to listen, dirty cops beat and arrested him. These weren't just any cops either, they were in on the operation, taking a cut of his profits. Cornell got lucky in a way. He was granted immunity from prosecution in exchange for testifying against the crooked officers. After everything fell apart, he spent the next couple of decades trying to rebuild his life and become someone the younger generation could look up to. He put in work as a youth counselor, activist, and coach, eventually working his way up to become the head coach of the football team at Compton College. Now let's swing back to another name that's long been tied to the origins of Snowfall's Uncle Jerome, OG Puddin. Puddin was no ordinary gangster. He was a teenager when he founded the Piru Boys, a local neighborhood crew that would eventually evolve into one of the most infamous gangs in the world, the Piru set of the Bloods. So when you hear the name Bloods, Puddin's fingerprints are all over that story. He wasn't just a street boss either. He was feared, known for being ruthless, and more than capable when it came to handling a weapon.
But he had a fast draw with the gun, and because he's not here with us, I might say some things like he was successful in putting some holes in some people.
He took out 5 bullets and put 1 bullet in and spun the drill, walked up to my head, right, and pulled the trigger, right? You can go. He did me and my homies like that. 1 bullet in it and pulled the trigger. Cause he's talking about he was in a good mood that day. But he was a psychopath.
As the leader of the Piru Boys, Puddin ran things with pure intensity. He was active in the field, setting the tone for his crew by being 10 toes down in the action. Under his leadership, the Pyrus stopped waiting for trouble to come their way. They became the trouble. Puddin lit a match that started a wildfire in Compton, and once it started burning, there was no stopping it. In 1972, the streets of Compton changed forever. That's when the real war kicked off. Instead of waiting for the Crips to strike first, Puddin took matters into his own hands. He decided to bring the smoke straight to their doorstep. Alongside a handful of loyal Pyros, he pulled up on a group of Crips and opened fire, kicking off what would become one of the bloodiest and longest-standing gang rivalries in Los Angeles history. That ambush turned into a quadruple shooting, 1 person dead, others wounded. After that, he was no longer just feared, he became the most hunted man in Compton.
Being a leader of a gang that opposed the Crips, it was like a trophy to kill Puddin. We had targets on their back, and the cold part about having a target on your back, youngsters, you don't even know.
Every Crip in the area had one goal: take Puddin out. But that was easier said than done. Puddin was slippery. He moved smart, constantly switching locations, changing cars, and never sticking to one pattern. One of the wildest examples of this was the Red House on Pine Street. This spot was a known Crip stronghold, a place where Tookie Williams and other top dogs kicked it. Most people wouldn't even drive by it, let alone mess with it. But Puddin made it a point to shoot up the Red House more than once, just to show them he wasn't scared of anyone or anything. Puddin had a hit list. He was coming for the Crip elite, the heads of the snake, and sitting right at the top of that list was none other than Tookie Williams himself. Then one day the opportunity came. Puddin caught Tookie slipping on Almond Street. Armed with a .45, Puddin let the shots fly. Tookie, caught off guard, dove for cover, trying to duck behind a nearby house. He moved fast, but not fast enough. One of the bullets tore through his leg, dropping him to the ground and leaving him badly wounded.
I know he surprised Tookie. Surprised the heck out of Tookie. Over there on Almond Street. Shot him. Tookie didn't expect that.
The hit on Tookie sent shockwaves through the streets. People couldn't believe it. Puddin would also go on a rampage after his right-hand man Tam got taken out by the Crips. Puddin made it his mission to rain hell on every Crip set in Compton. It got to a point where if a car even looked like Puddin's, Crips would scatter. They didn't care if it was him or not. Nobody wanted to find out the hard way.
And you had to be careful of that one person Puddin, man, because he had a green 69 Riviera. Ever we seen a green 69 Riviera, we would run whatever because we didn't know if that was Puddin or not.
Then it all came crashing down when Puddin got arrested on a serious R charge. They sent him away. And just like that, Compton got a temporary break from the storm he'd created. When Puddin got out of prison, he didn't waste any time getting back to life on the outside. And part of that new chapter included hooking up with none other than Jewel, the one they called the First Lady of Death Row. On paper, it seemed like an unlikely match, but in reality, it made all kinds of sense. Jewel was blowing up in the music world, riding high with Death Row Records, and Puddin was still a legend in the streets. Together, they had this wild, electric energy. But that flame burned way too hot. What started as passion and excitement quickly turned into tension and chaos. Then came the moment that nobody saw coming. Jewel shot Puddin in the chest.
I had went to jail for shooting this Puddin who started the Blood Gang.
She later told everyone it was self-defense, saying Puddin had gotten physical and that he couldn't handle her success, especially with how big she was getting under death row.
So I had a lot of wanting to kill me after I shot dude, but they don't know it was self-defense because he was beating me up and he was very violent and jealous.
And at first, people bought that story. Puddin had always had that intense energy, and with Jewel in the spotlight, it was easy to imagine things getting heated between them. But not everyone was convinced. Those who really knew Puddin told a different story. Sure, he had a hard edge and a heavy rep, but he wasn't known for beating on women. If anything, they thought the problem might have come from the other direction. Puddin had always been surrounded by women. Even when he was with Jewel, he didn't exactly stop entertaining other women. That kind of lifestyle created jealousy, arguments, and constant drama. Some say Jewel wasn't the only one dealing with his attention being all over the place. And maybe that was what really lit the match. Still, even with all that chaos, people couldn't help but remember the presence Puddin carried. He had this clean, sharp look, rocked a full afro, carried himself like he knew exactly who he was. Some folks who knew him believed if he'd taken a different path, he could have been something big. But instead, he chose a different road, and it made him a legend, for better or worse. Now, that bullet he took from Jewel, it didn't kill him right away, but it changed things. He survived, but the damage stayed with him. Over the years, it started wearing on him, slowly but surely. By the time 2006 rolled around, that old wound finally caught up to him. His health took a serious dive, and complications from the shooting made things worse. At just 51 years old, Puddin passed away.